Howdy once again everyone, and today I'm testing out an interesting new low-budget autofocus full-frame lens from TTArtisan, their 40mm f2. It's going to hit the shelves at a very low price of only $168 or £159 here in the UK, and it'll be available for L-mount, Sony E-mount and Nikon Z-mount cameras, full frame or APS-C, although the L-mount version will be coming at a later date apparently. I've always been a big fan of 40mm lenses, especially on full-frame cameras. They offer a perspective that's remarkably close to that of the human eye, giving a slightly wide angle, but with a nice little emphasis on your subject. 40mm is not for everyone, but it can be fantastically useful. In fact, I've been using a Sigma 40mm lens to shoot these very lens reviews for about 6 years now. I'd like to thank TTArtisan for sending me a copy of this lens for evaluation, although as usual this is a totally independent review. The lens's design is interesting in that it looks and feels just like a standard Chinese manual focus lens, even though it's actually autofocus. The body is all metal and actually looks and feels very tough and tightly assembled. I really like the design actually. It looks quite good and feels nice in the hand. It's based on a metal lens mount. There's no USB port in the lens itself, but there is one built into the rear lens cap, so don't lose that rear lens cap. Then we get an aperture control ring which is electronically connected to the lens's iris mechanism. It clicks quite nicely every third of an f-stop. Then finally, at the top, we get a metallic manual focus ring which turns extremely smoothly and works quite responsively with the autofocus motor. As you can see, the lens doesn't suffer from too much focus breathing, although we do see some distortion warping in the edges as you focus in and out. The lens's autofocus system is quite accurate and almost silent in use. Whether shooting in single-shot autofocus or in continuous autofocus mode, it works averagely fast. The lens's front filter size is 52mm and it comes with a small metallic lens hood, which fits in place very nicely. Overall, we are being treated to good build quality here despite the lens's low cost. Alright, let's see about image quality then. We'll start by testing it on a full frame camera, the brutal 61MP Sony A7CR. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. If you want full frame images, zoomed into the 42MP ratio of my older reviews by the way for comparison, then you can find a link to a special unlisted video in the description below. Straight from f2, sharpness and contrast are very good in the middle of your images. Stop down to f2.8 and they get excellent. Anyway, let's open back up to f2 and take a look in the image corners. Okay, as you can see here, they are soft and ghostly, and the mid-frame was like that as well. Stop down to f2.8 for a little more brightness and contrast. Stop down to f4 for noticeably more resolution in those corners. f5.6 looks a little brighter there, but we're also getting some colour fringing emerging now. Stop down to f8 or f11 for best image quality in those corners, although they're still hardly impressive. Stop down as far as f16 and we see a lot of softness now emerging due to the effect of diffraction. Okay, that's a performance in line with the lens's low price. It's nice and sharp in the middle of your images, but corner image quality rather lags behind, of course. How would it perform on an APS-C camera then? Let's test it out on the 26MP crop mode of my A7CR. At f2, we're still seeing good image quality in the middle, although there's a hint of purple colour fringing, which is a little more noticeable here. Stop down to f2.8 and, as before, central image quality is now perfect. Okay, let's open up the aperture back to f2 and look over in the corners. Do you remember I mentioned that the mid-frame area on the full-frame image wasn't so sharp? That's translated into soft corners on APS-C. At f2.8 there's only a slight improvement, f4 is about the same but f5.6 is very slightly sharper. Again though, f8 and f11 see the best image quality in the corners, f16 becomes pretty soft. Overall, I think this is clearly a lens best used on full frame rather than APS-C. Let's turn off in-camera corrections and take a look at distortion and vignetting on full frame. There is a serious issue I should let you know about here. The good news is that the lens displays relatively low distortion. The bad news is that vignetting is rather crazy at f2. Stop down to f2.8, f4, then f5.6 to see those corners gradually brighten up, but it's still a problem. The lens's minimum focus distance is 40 centimeters, nothing special. Close-up image quality is very poor at f2. As you can see, contrast is almost completely washed out. It's only a little better at f2.8, but stop down to f4 to see very sharp close-up image quality now. Let's see about work against bright lights then. We get some serious problems here too. At f2, glaring is very strong, which will lead to highly washed out images if a bright light source is within your picture. Stop down to about f4, as I do here, and a lot of that glaring does clear right up, which is nice, but still, bright lights can be a problem at f2. While we're back in the dark, let's take a look for coma and sunstars. At f2, coma smearing in the image corners is a little on the strong side here, as I expected from the sharpness test results. At f2.8, those coma wings are trimmed back a bit, and at f4, they're gone, although image quality in those corners is obviously still a bit soft. Let's move the camera over and take a look for sunstars. They are beginning to emerge at f5.6, as you can see here. From f8 to f11 to f16, they start getting huge though, and legitimately rather impressive. Next, bokeh. Deeply out of focus backgrounds look lovely and soft here. Backgrounds in transitional zones can look a little more edgy though, but they're never ugly. Finally, let's look at longitudinal chromatic aberration. It's hard to see at f2 due to the poor close-up image quality here. Stop down to f2.8 or f4 and it becomes more apparent, but not terribly strong. It's still hanging around at f5.6 and very slightly at f8, but only slightly. Overall, I found this lens rather interesting to test, but mostly because it has rather a rollercoaster of optical issues. It's a very low-priced lens and displays the usual expected problems. In its defense, it is fun to use, its autofocus works correctly, and it's nice and sharp in the middle of its images with nice quality bokeh. But of course, well, you've already seen all the image quality problems it has, including soft image corners, unless you stop the aperture right down. While its distortion might be low, the lens has big problems with vignetting, including a nasty surprise when shooting at f16 and focused to longer distances. You'll have to work around that while doing landscape photography. The lens is a low-cost bit of fun at the end of the day, rather than a very serious optical instrument for high-quality shooting, but still, fun lenses can often still produce some gorgeous pictures. Thanks for watching everyone, and as usual, thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members for all your assistance in keeping these sponsorship-free reviews coming along. It's my pleasure to give them all kinds of extra exclusive bonus content, so check it out in the description below, and ciao for now.